Now we start with the Middle East. Israel's government spokesperson has confirmed that the first phase of Gaza ceasefire agreement has been finalized in Egypt. She has said that the plan was signed earlier this morning, laying out the steps for the release of hostages and the initial withdrawal of troops. The spokesperson has added that a ceasefire is expected to take effect within 24 hours of today's Israeli cabinet meeting. According to the official, Israeli military will retain control over roughly 53% of Gaza during the transition period. She has also confirmed that Palestinian leader Marwan Barghouti will not be included in the upcoming prisoner release. Barghouti is thought to be a possible challenger to Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas's control of Ramallah. Israel's government spokesperson has confirmed that the first phase of the Gaza ceasefire agreement has been finalized in Egypt. She has said that the plan was signed earlier this morning, laying out the steps for the release of hostages and the initial withdrawal of Israeli troops. The spokeswoman has added that a ceasefire is expected to take effect within 24 hours of today's Israeli cabinet meeting. According to the official, Israeli military will retain control over roughly 53% of Gaza during the transition period. She has also confirmed that Palestinian leader Marwan Barghouti will not be included in the upcoming prisoner release. Barghouti is thought to be a possible challenger to Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas's control of Ramallah. Now for this discussion, we're joined by John Rossomando. He's the president of Viking Research Associates, joins us live from US. Thank you very much, John, for joining us again. Good to see you. John, with the first phase of Gaza ceasefire agreement now finalized, how do you assess the potential for this agreement to hold?
Well, I think it'll hold at least, hopefully in the beginning. But I think the thing that we have to, be aware of is that, Hamas believes in something called a hudna, which is a temporary truce. It would never agree to a permanent peace with Israel. I mean, it's in Hamas's charter. So I'm, very cautiously optimistic. But also when you have people in Gaza running around saying Khaybar, Khaybar, Ya Hud, which is their war cry against the Jews, it doesn't make me feel good.
And now Israeli military has said that they will be retaining control over half of Gaza during this transition period. Do you know anything about how long will this transition period, or how long could this transition period last, and how many percentage are they retaining?
Well, I think that, all of this is kind of very open-ended. I mean, it depends upon how Hamas honors its end of the bargain in terms of releasing the hostages, in terms of transitioning and giving up power in Gaza, in terms of at some point giving up its arms, which is something that the Israelis are want. I mean, the number one thing that always gets overlooked is Israel's need for security, and no one ever discusses it.
And we are also joined by Yossi Cooper-Wasser for this discussion. Yossi, I would like to come to you. Thank you for joining us again. And John, thank you for sharing that insight. Yossi, what is your reaction? Do you think that this agreement could hold, particularly with Israeli military retaining control over half of the Gaza during the transition period?
Well, it can hold because it is in the interest of Israel and it is in the interest of the Hamas as well at this point to hold the agreement, because otherwise they are going to be faced with Israeli military moves that may endanger their ability to stay in power. They still believe that they will be able to stay in power if this part of the first phase of the agreement is being implemented, they can still convince the Americans to leave them in power and leave them with some of the weapons. They still believe that this is possible, so they have an interest in implementing this phase.
And Yossi, the decision to exclude Marwan Barghouti, this particular individual from the upcoming prisoner release, it has sparked controversy. So how do you think this will impact Palestinian internal politics, and what do you think what could be the reason behind not releasing him from Israel's point of view?
You know, it was not only that he was directly responsible for killing 5 Israelis, but he was responsible for the entire Second Intifada. More than 1,000 Israelis were killed under his leadership. So for us to release a person like that from jail that can spark another intifada if he just is in place to lead the Palestinians again is too dangerous. And that's why we are not going to release Marwan Barghouti. Because it's, you know, that when he was put in charge to court in charge of these 5 murders, he was also responsible for the murders of so many others that the court decided, because it was not a direct responsibility, not to deal with these matters, with these cases. But we know that he was responsible for the killing of so many Israelis. We cannot afford allowing him to resume his activities.
And so who is he? Is he was he a Hamas leader? Was he another faction's leader? Who is he?
No, he was the leader of the Fatah group under Yasser Arafat at the time. And when Arafat wanted to lead the Second Intifada with all the suicide bombings and so on and so forth, he used Barghouti in order to tell the people of Fatah and of the other groups to carry out terror attacks. And he was the person that symbolized the Second Intifada in the mind of every Palestinian. And that's why I think he's responsible directly for everything that happened at the time. And by the way, later on, he became very close to Hamas, even though he still belongs to the Fatah. He's very close to Hamas, and he cooperated with them on all kinds of calls for more violence and for unity within the Palestinian political scene.
And is he? What's his relationship like with the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas?
On the surface, they are in very good relationships. Abbas calls for his release all the time and wait for him to be released and so on and so forth because he's very popular. But behind the scene, there are tensions because Abbas considers him to be somebody who may replace him. So he doesn't want him to endanger him. And this is the very complicated relationships they have.
And how long do you think, Yossi, will this transition period? It's very open, and like our other guest John just mentioned, everything here in this plan is very open. And how long do you think this transition period will last?
This is one of the open questions about the plan. How long? There are no timetables. We move from one stage to another according to performance-based criteria and not according to timetables. So it's difficult to say how long can you discuss with the Hamas the issue of disarming. But at one point, I guess the Americans are going to put some timetables on that and tell the Hamas that they have, I don't know, 2 weeks to decide what they want, and if they do not decide, then there's going to be consequences to that. And this is not something to speak about at this point, because nobody wants to make Hamas think again about the implementation of the first phase. Let's first move through the first phase of the releasing the hostages, and then we'll start dealing with the disarmament of Hamas, with the putting in place of another regime in Gaza led by technocrats, with bringing in the Gaza interim control team, and with the build-up of the international stabilization force. We have a lot of stages and a lot of things to do following the release of the hostages. And right now, we shouldn't speak about these issues too much because we want to focus on the releasing of the hostages, make sure that it is performed according to what was agreed upon.
And Yossi, now the ceasefire agreement was brokered in Egypt, and there were other countries that were there, like such as Turkey, Egypt, Qatar. What do you think? What was the other countries' role in this peace process?
Well, they had a very important role because Israel has put the pressure on Hamas by the military operation we carried out in the Gaza City. And the role of Qatar and Turkey was to take this leverage that Israel has built and to explain to Hamas that if they are not going to move forward with the hostages release, then Israel will keep moving and destroy them and remove them from power by force. And when they hear that from their friends, the Turks and the Qataris, they are much more ready to listen than they are when we tell them that directly, or when the Americans are telling them that, or when the Egyptians tell them that. They have to hear it from Qatar and Turkey. I guess Qatar and Turkey also added all kinds of threats of their own, because the leadership of Hamas lives in both Qatar and Turkey. So this was they have the ability to expel them, which may cause a lot of damage and problems for Hamas. So maybe they used also this leverage in order to convince Hamas to accept the deal. And eventually we have a good deal because it's good for everybody, by the way. It's good for Israel, of course, because the hostages are going to be released finally, all of them. But it's good also for Hamas because they are saved from being exterminated by the Israeli military. And they get the terrorists that they wanted to release from jail, unfortunately. But 1,900 terrorists are going to be released from jail, including some arch-terrorists.
With that, I would like to thank John Rosamondo and Yossi Cooper-Wasser for sharing that insight. We have a breaking news. According to Israeli President's Office, U.S. President Donald Trump to be in Jerusalem on 12th October. In just 3 days, this comes after the news of Hamas-Israel ceasefire being agreed has come in. Now we go back to our guest discussion with Yossi Cooper-Wasser. He's an Israeli intelligence and security expert, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Yossi, given the U.S.'s, we were just talking about the foreign interference or foreign roles in this mediating this conflict. What do you think? How significant was U.S.'s role, particularly President Trump's role?
Well, of course, President Trump played a huge role in making this happen. First of all, he has put his weight on making this happen. It's, after all, this is the most important person in the world. And when he's directly and personally involved in the way that he was, everybody has to listen and take into consideration whatever the president says. You cannot ignore him, and you cannot say to him something and then do not deliver, because this was very important, because Qatar and Turkey promised to bring Hamas, and when they realized that there are problems with that, they felt very bad about the possibility that they would appear as giving promises to President Trump and not being able to deliver. That's what made them more keen on making sure that Hamas delivers. And and on top of that, he orchestrated all of this campaign that brought about the signing of the agreement. He brought the Muslim and Arab countries to the table. He brought Netanyahu to the table. He brought the Egyptians to the table as well. This was a very complicated act, and President Trump did it brilliantly. I think he really deserves all the credit for making it happen. Everybody else contributed as much as they could, but the orchestra, the person who orchestrated all of that was President Trump, and he should be praised for that.
Yes, thank you very much, Yossi Cooper-Wasser, for sharing that insight and staying with us throughout this topic.